You may or may not know that when we get together, or Paul and I, being who we are, we preach, right? Mm-hmm. And you think, well, you know, every week, how they do that? Well, believe it or not, we read these verses more than one time in more than one version, just like I had you do. In fact, in front of me right here is a parallel Bible. 1, 2, 3. See the 4 columns?
Wow.
All right. So I've got 4 different versions here, and I don't even have the New American Standard. That's a total different one. But the best part is we read. Why? Because there's different words being used. Is there not?
Yes.
I mean, one version has this word, another one has that word, and you're like, okay, what interpretation do I go with? How do I define these things? You know, the best part of the Bible is it can challenge you. It gives you skills for life, and it just helps you understand who you are more clearly and better. But there's one message, if you notice through all the readings today, that you should have gathered. What's the bottom line for God?
Love.
Love. God loves you unconditionally, no matter what. Flat out, done. Right? Did you highlight some of those?
Highlight love.
It's all over the place in these, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Now, we had a prayer request earlier that sometimes we, not to pick on anybody because I'm not going to mention any names, but sometimes what? We're our worst enemies because we self-criticize ourselves. The part I like about this, think about it. Now, I'm going to read it in the message, and I'm going to start with 18. My dear children, let's not talk about love. Let's practice real love. This is the only way we'll know we're living truly, living in God's reality. It's also the way to shut down deliberating self-criticism. Let me repeat that. It's a way to shut down. I can compete or I can just wait. I'm waiting. All right. Shut down deliberating self-criticism. Because we're our worst enemies. Even when there is something to it. Okay? Yeah, there's something to it, but shut it down. Why? For God is greater than our worried hearts, and knows more about us than we do ourselves. And friends, once that's taken care of, and we're no longer accusing or condemning ourselves, we're bold and free before God. Very deep. It's very, very deep.
Well, God doesn't require perfection?
God doesn't require perfection. God doesn't require perfection. God doesn't have a standard for perfection. God doesn't even have a standard of how to act. Does he? Comes down to, think about it. God loves you unconditionally. Please do so that everyone around you. That's all that's asked. It's that simple. God loves you unconditionally. So why aren't you loving yourself unconditionally? Oh, dang, don't you hate that part? Oh, I'll just say it. Damn it! You mean I gotta love myself? But I got faults, people. I got faults.
That's hard to do.
God doesn't care about my faults. I have to remind myself very often, God doesn't care about my faults. God loves me, period. Period. And part 2 of that is right here. That we believe in the name, well, it doesn't. Love one another. Right. I highlighted that. Love one another. Love yourself. Love others. What would happen if we honestly love one another and treat them like we love them? Treat them like family. Treat them like the dearest person we love or the dearest thing we love. I love my dogs. If I treated everybody as good as I treat my dogs, they should be on top of the world. If we loved everyone and treated them equally, and I felt so sorry. I was watching the news this morning. There was violent protests in Baltimore. Yeah. I understand why they had the protest. I have no problem. But those people did not love anyone in those shops they broke into and stole from. They were looking out for who? Themselves. They didn't even give a shit about why they were protesting. It's just an option to what? Go in and steal.
Yeah.
I am sorry. That's not love. Bombers. Those stupid idiots that go in and what? Try, what's his name? And Boston's on trial and they're trying to figure out whether to kill him or put him in jail forever, right? All right, for the Boston Marathon bombing. If they were taught love, that would never have happened in the first place. Love is not being pushed as much as it should be. There is no standard of behavior, people, except love. Love yourself. And if you can love yourself like God does, it said it right here. For God is greater than words. Once that's taken care of, and we're no longer accusing or condemning ourselves, we're bold and free before God to love those around us. Now what I did was make you read it over first. I don't know if you agree with me or not. But what? I challenged you to read it in 2 different versions today so you could kind of get the gist of where I was headed. And I've been pushing what? Philippians. Sure enough, I pulled Philippians in there too. It's talking about the same thing, isn't it? Yeah. So not only do we get it from John, who wrote 1 John, we got it from Paul. God loves you unconditionally. Why aren't you loving others the same? Oh my God, slap in the face twice.
How about why aren't you loving yourself?
That's a big one.
Wow.
Why aren't we loving ourselves? Why are we our worst critics?
Because I think that we're taught.
You realize society looks for faults.
Mm-hmm. All the time. Yeah.
And that makes it even harder for us to love ourselves. I spent years looking, and I was really good at it. I could look at people, and even in teachers, I could go in and say, oh, I know what they're wanting from me, and I'll be that person. Mm-hmm. That's how I graduated from college with honors. Not that I really learned. I just knew what the teacher wanted. I figured it out and gave them what they wanted. Yeah. Guess what? You get A's for that. Mm-hmm. Jobs will give you what? Raises. Jobs will promote you if you do that. Mm-hmm. But I totally ignored me. I didn't look at me. I looked at the world and said, what do you want from me? Because it's easier to fit in if I know what you want from me.
Yeah. You'll be rewarded.
Because I'll be rewarded.
Don't you get punished.
Now, new thought pattern, folks. Love myself. I had to learn to love myself. I had to learn to accept myself. I had to learn. And I wore my gay shirt. You know why? Because it took me 40 years to figure out how to love myself enough to say, sure enough, I am gay. When I was growing up, you know what I thought? It would be easier if I was a guy, then I could do what I wanted to do, which was love women. But I wasn't a guy. And I wasn't transgender. I didn't want to really be a guy. It was just been easier for me if I was, then I wouldn't have to what? Deal with this issue in my life. There was this huge sin that I wasn't allowed to be. I had to turn it around and say, I love me. This is who I am. Why am I fighting it? God made me who I am. God loves me for who I am. Why am I the one standing between me and God? Love yourselves, folks. It's very hard to do, but learn to love yourself because then it's easy to live and share honestly the love God gave you with others.